Hi, my name's Jo Gwynn, and I help run two groups on Facebook, Australians stuck in India and Australians stuck around the world. And at the start of the pandemic, I was also stuck in India, which is how I got involved in the Facebook groups, the place that we turned to for support when the borders closed and we didn't know what to do. Today, we're grieving 18 months of border closures. And for me personally, it's 18 months since I was meant to marry my partner. I'm one of the lucky ones. I was able to return on the second Qantas flight back to Australia. But when I left, I never anticipated that we would be in the position that we're still in now. I didn't, in my wildest dreams, think that it would take me so long to reunite with my partner, 16 months now and counting. I didn't expect that I would be on my 275th day of lockdown, curfew, quarantine and isolation. And I most certainly didn't expect that there would be over 40,000 Australians registered with DFAT still trying to come home, and hundreds of thousands more that aren't counted that are affected by these border closures. When the travel restrictions were introduced, none of us anticipated the situation that we're facing right now. And the fact is that 18 months after the border restrictions started, at a time when many countries are moving away from restrictions altogether, and it's harder than ever to get into Australia, harder than ever. We're 18 months into border restrictions now, and at this stage, just over 2,000 passengers per week are allowed to enter Australia on commercial flights. Some flights have just 7 passengers on board. And I cannot tell you how heartbreaking it is to see photographs of empty planes flying into Australia when there are so many thousands of people who need to get back home. People just cannot find flights to book. And even if they do, even if they're lucky to find one at costs of $14,000, $20,000, that isn't a guarantee that you are going to get home. Even paying that much, people get bumped, and people get repeatedly bumped, and their flights are repeatedly cancelled. And there's no guarantee of getting a refund or getting a timely refund. The uncertainty around Australia's borders reopening is leading airlines to consider withdrawing their flights from Australia entirely. We're 18 months into the pandemic, and Australian citizens and permanent residents are still bottlenecked by hotel quarantine. There's still no purpose-built quarantine facility. There's still no proper plans for home quarantine, let alone moving beyond that. And there's very little hope for all the visa holders that are stuck outside of Australia. We're 18 months into travel restrictions and nothing has been done to ease them. 18 months and we're only just starting to build those quarantine facilities. And there's plans to run repatriation flights well into next year. 18 months and still no clear answer as to when the pain, the suffering that travel restrictions have caused is going to end. 18 months ago when the borders closed, no one expected that they'd still be stuck and separated from their loved ones. No one expected the government to abandon its citizens. No one expected that the government would prevent them from coming home for such a long time and neglect them. No one expected to be vilified by their country, by the Prime Minister, by their family and friends. No one expected that it would have actually been made illegal to try and come back to Australia, which is what happened to people stuck in India earlier this year. No one expected that we would have our human rights denied, our right to come home, children's rights to be with their parents. Stranded Australian citizens, permanent residents, visa holders, and their families have been the victims of Australia's COVID response. No other country has prevented their people from returning home, and Australians can't even get support and information that they need from the embassies and the high commissions, from DFAT and from the government. So people turn to online communities for support and for information, and not just basic information like, can I transit through New Zealand or not? People come for emotional support. They ask, how can I get my child back? They ask, how can I get my dying mother home? They ask, how can we cut through this red tape and bureaucracy that is actively preventing the most vulnerable of all from reuniting with their families? And this help that people get is coming from the generosity of friendly strangers, not from the government, not from DFAT, not from our embassies. Every day I see trauma. I see mental health crises. I see flights cancelled, jobs and homes lost. I see marriages failing and families living with complete uncertainty. I see people who have given up hope of ever returning home. And sadly, I hear stories of people who aren't going to make it home. They haven't made it home. We've had 18 months of heartache, depression, stress, pain, suffering, and uncertainty. And it's time for healing. It's time to reconnect Australia.